Hello and a warm welcome to WION, broadcasting live from the British capital this hour. You're with me, Katie Pilbeam. Let's get to the headlines. A US-brokered ceasefire remains fragile after witnesses report fresh airstrikes and parliamentarians claim to have seized a major oil refinery and power plant. German and British Eurofighters intercept 3 Russian military aircraft over the Baltic Sea. 2 Su-27 flankers and an Il-20 from Russia were flying without transponder signals in international airspace. Russian opposition figure and Kremlin critic Yevgeny Rozman goes on trial in Moscow. He was arrested for speaking out against Russia's army and the invasion of Ukraine. Top seeds Denver Nuggets reached the second round of the playoffs after sealing a series win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. They will now face the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference semifinals.
Edwards had a chance, just a little. Here comes Edwards quickly.
To our top story at this hour, the cost of living crisis looms here in the UK. The latest figures show more than 1 million children in the UK received food aid last year. Well, this is an increase of 300,000 over the last numbers released. Well, according to the UK's largest food bank, Trussell Trust Charity, nearly 3 million food parcels were distributed in the last 12 months, out of which more than 1.1 million went to children. The charity added that the number of emergency packages for children the previous year was just around 800,000. And in 2017 to 2018, the figure was less than 500,000. Well, the cost of living crisis took an ugly turn in the UK, largely after Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, food banks have become an integral part of life for many now, as an increasing cost and wage stagnation situation has pushed many to seek financial help. Well, the crisis has pushed several industry sectors toward industrial action or strikes. Well, these sectors, they range from doctors, nurses, teachers to dock workers and lawyers. The Trussell Trust has urged the Conservative government to increase welfare payments to a more realistic level so that they can at least cover essential costs. Well, the Conservative Party has drawn fresh criticism after its senior member Lee Anderson said that people struggling with rising prices should budget better and questioned whether food poverty is indeed real. Well, to discuss if it's real or not, we are joined now by Sarah Coles, who is the head of personal finance at Hargreaves Lansdown. So thank you so much indeed, joining us live from Bristol. So this is quite a depressing situation, isn't it? Knowing that these children need this aid in a country so wealthy as Britain.
Yes, it is really, really miserable looking at these figures. I mean, one of the big issues that we have is that families with children are particularly likely to be in poverty. And this has got an awful lot to do with the fact that they spend a lot more on their essential outgoings. So we do a piece of research, the Savings and Resilience Barometer, and we look at financial resilience and who's got the sort of strength to withstand sort of rising prices. And across the board, people with children, so that's couples with children and single people with children, are all struggling more than those without. And it's purely because they've got more mouths to feed and more people to keep warm. And as you said, inflation of those essentials has absolutely rocketed over the past year. What can be done, Sarah? You're a professional in this domain. What would you suggest to help this rather dire situation? Well, it's one of those, it is incredibly difficult question to face, because, and it's something that, I think Hugh Pill came up with yesterday. So he was sort of saying we're all just going to have to get used to it, purely because if we get pay rises, then that's going to feed into an inflationary spiral. So that is part of the concern from sort of those in government and those in the Bank of England. I think probably the overriding impact is for people who are receiving things like universal credit and on benefits. The big advantage for those people, and it won't have fed into the figures yet, is that they've had to wait such a long time for an inflationary based increase. So that 10.1% that they got in April, they've waited a whole year for, and the previous rise was less than 3%. So they've sort of been playing catch up. They've just got to the point where those payments are higher. So they're just at the point where it should be making a difference. The other good piece of news is that they're going to be getting an extra payment from the government. So anybody who's on universal credit will get a payment from the government of £301, which will come sometime between now and the middle of May. If you're on tax credits, it comes a little bit later, but it'll still come at the beginning of May. And that will make a bit of a difference. But I think by this stage, an awful lot of people, they're behind on bills, they're running into debt. So those sort of one-off cost of living payments, they're unlikely to make a huge difference. They're more likely to sort of help people sort of make some steps towards catching up. The thing that will make a difference is when these sort of slightly higher inflation-linked payments sort of feed through, on a continual basis. What I think makes a lot of sense is bringing together that sort of the inflationary increase. So we get it once a year. I think one of the issues is the inflation has been so high all year. There is an argument that these inflationary increases for things like benefits should be faster. It's similar, the same sort of goes for the state pension, that, we get a measure of inflation in September, we then get that implemented in April. There's an argument that these sort of updates should be more regular so that we don't get sort of a year of 10% inflation before finally getting an increase in benefits and state pensions for those who are the most vulnerable.
Sarah Coles, thank you so much indeed. Let's hope those policies make some tiny difference. Sarah Coles, thank you, Head of Personal Finance from Hargreaves Lansdown. We appreciate your time. The UK government hosting refugees is again under the radar. A new report says Britain's Home Office has issued a letter asking around 8,000, Afghan refugees staying in hotels at government's expense to find their own accommodation. Well, according to a report published by Sky News, the people who received this letter are Afghan evacuees who came to the UK after the Taliban took over Afghanistan. Earlier reports said that Afghan refugees are to be given a 3-day notice to move out of hotels. Under this new plan, refugees arriving from Afghanistan will not be given hotel accommodation, and whoever turns down an offer of housing will not get a second offer. Well, the UK government says close to £1 million a day is spent just on hotels for Afghan refugees, and Afghans make up a fifth of all people living in refugees' hotels. Well, this is according to the letter seen by Sky News. The Home Office recommends that Afghan refugees accept the allocated property. It also says that no further allocations are to be made post the present offer, and they need to find their own accommodation. Well, unlike in most other nations offering asylum to Afghan refugees, Afghan evacuees in the UK, they can work. That's the big difference. The government has repeatedly said that it is time for them to fully integrate into British society. But many activists are opposing the plan. They claim the new policy will cause anxiety amid refugees who have already experienced trauma. Well, many even claim the plan goes against the UK's pledge after its withdrawal from Afghanistan. At the time, the UK had pledged to resettle up to 20,000 more vulnerable Afghans. Well, to talk further about this, we do have our expert here in London. It's our correspondent, Alex Isaac. Alex, a very difficult one because these people run for their lives. They've escaped persecution and now they're coming here to seek some form of safety. It's very difficult, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But it is to clarify that Sky letter that has been seen by them and a few other newspapers actually is only like the end of this trail, because actually a month ago the government did put out a statement on their website to say that this was going to be happening and that they were looking to try and get those seeking refuge from Kabul out of hotels and into housing. And it did state that if they didn't have the recommended housing, that they would have to look for alternative housing, and the government couldn't help much going forward. But it does seem to be that these are just a number of those that are coming over to the UK that are looking for help from the government, and the government isn't doing much to help them go forward. Of course, a lot of people in the UK themselves who are on many of the council housing waiting lists also are not getting their own housing. There just isn't enough to go around, and the government has said that they have put hundreds of millions of pounds into helping those that come to this country resettle, especially if they're coming from countries where they are under threat. But there is only so much that they're claiming that can be done. And of course, we are hearing from the other side those that have come to try and help themselves because they have had threats in the countries that they've escaped from, and they are saying that they feel lost and abandoned here in the UK. But it does seem right at the moment that the government has been steadfast on their determination that if you do come over to the country, then you should be trying to look for a housing and for a job yourself, especially if you can work. But then again, we also hear those that are coming over illegally, and they've been setting up in hotels, and that's been costing, as you rightly said, like £1 million a day. So it's not just for those that have come over legally, but also those illegally. But of course, those people who are coming over illegally on small boats in the Channel do still keep coming, and their numbers are reaching higher and higher figures. So those that have come legally and are trying to come through the right ways and right methods, they're also finding that they're not getting as much attention as they need as well. It does seem that this is a never-ending issue for the government that doesn't seem to know what to do with those people who are seeking asylum in the country, or those people who are trying to get through the cost of living. The first story that you had on today, that is also a huge issue as well. The government doesn't have an unending pot of money, and they are trying to figure out ways. At the moment, it does seem that it's the people that are getting affected the most.
Yeah, quite right, Alex. You're right to sort of relate the two topics there. Thank you so much indeed on this very sensitive topic. Alex Izad here in London for us. In August 2021, the United States withdrew the last of its troops from Afghanistan, ending its military presence after nearly 20 years. At that time, 2 suicide bombers and gunmen attacked crowds of Afghans flocking Kabul airport. A scene of desperation was transformed into one of horror in the waning days of left. For those fleeing the Taliban takeover, the Taliban now has killed the leader of the Islamic State cell responsible for the bombing. Well, the suicide bombing killed 170 Afghans and 13 US servicemen and women. A senior US administration official told Politico that the leader of the IS cell that planned the attack was killed in recent weeks. The official said the United States has not been involved in the raid. The official further stressed the US is not partnering with the Taliban, but the outcome is significant. The US exit from Afghanistan resulted in the Taliban regaining control of the country and created a refugee crisis as many Afghans fled. It also raised fears that terrorists might use Afghanistan as a safety haven, as was the case with al-Qaeda's. A recent Washington Post report citing leaked Pentagon reports said that the US believes Afghanistan is becoming a staging ground for the Islamic State group. The Taliban and the Islamic State have engaged in a turf war in Afghanistan, where experts have pointed to the terror group as the biggest security challenge for the country going forward. The conflict in Sudan now risks a hazardous biological threat, apart from the humanitarian crisis, which has already been triggered. Well, this is the warning which the World Health Organization gave on Tuesday. It came after one of Sudan's warring parties seized a lab in the capital of Khartoum. More in our next report.
A high risk of biological hazard. That was the warning from the World Health Organization on Tuesday after one of Sudan's warring parties seized a laboratory in the capital Khartoum. Dr. Nima Saeed Abid, the WHO's representative in Sudan, said the National Public Health Laboratory houses measles and cholera pathogens as well as other hazardous materials.
So with the electricity shut down and with no technician taking care of all these, the risk of biological hazard is high in Khartoum because of the occupations of the lab by one of the fighting parties. It is not really necessary to say which party.
Fighting between Sudan's army and a paramilitary group has killed hundreds and wounded thousands. Hospitals and other essential services have been paralysed. Many have been left stranded in their homes with dwindling supplies of food and water.
Yesterday we heard more reports of looting of humanitarian supplies and warehouses.
On Tuesday, Jens Lerck, spokesperson for the UN's humanitarian office, said it had been forced to cut back on some of its activities due to intense fighting. Humanitarian operations had been transferred from Khartoum to Port Sudan, he said, adding that they were committed to continue to deliver for the people of Sudan.
Our next story is about Snapchat, a popular social media platform. Recently, the company announced its entry into the AI chatbot race. How? Well, by rolling out its chatbot called My AI to the app users. But the surprise of many was that customers have already started asking for the removal of the new feature. Well, the AI feature is backed by OpenAI's GPT technology. It aims to respond to your messages like a friend. However, multiple users have voiced their discomfort. Their concern is that the feature is a violation of their privacy. While it's said that the bot doesn't have access to users' personal information, users allege that it's not entirely true, though. The AI-driven chatbot knows the birth details of users. Well, the feature's performance has also failed to impress consumers worldwide. Some users have accused the AI of lying and gaslighting. Many are calling it a creepy feature to chat with. Also, netizens are slamming Snapchat for pinning My AI to the top of users' chat feed. All this backlash has led to poor ratings on the app stores. It remains to be seen how Snapchat handles this criticism. Well, one idea might be offering users a choice to delete the chatbot, which could help improving Snapchat's rankings on the app stores. The Northern Hemisphere is experiencing contrasting climatic conditions. While Europe is baking due to sizzling heat, the American Midwest is experiencing unnaturally chilly weather for April. Well, the stark difference is affecting wildlife and humans alike. Spain's citizens are sweating under the heat, whereas migratory birds in America are freezing in midair and dropping out of the sky. Well, Spain is bracing for temperatures as high as 40 degrees Celsius. Meteorologists have dubbed this an Iberian oven. Officials say this would be the highest temperature in the region for April since 1961, when data keeping began. As per officials, the weather is a thermal ridge or wave of high temperatures that extend from Africa to the Iberian Peninsula. In response to the drought, Spain announced a $1.98 billion tax exemption, but 828,000 farmers whose crops are depleted as a consequence. Well, in contrast, a cold snap has led to migrating water birds freezing and falling out of the sky in the American Midwest. The unusually cold weather in April has led to ice forming on the wings of the loons. At least 6 cities in Wisconsin have reported loons falling out of the sky. Well, they fell out of the sky due to ice forming on their wings, since they're unable to fly due to the extra weight of that ice. Well, loons are a type of aquatic bird found in North America. They migrate at high altitude from the Gulf of Mexico towards Canada. Chinese martial arts star, Jet Li, he turns 60 today. Can you believe that? born Ling Cheng-ji in Beijing in 1963. Li also retired kung fu fighter. He was a kung fu champion once upon a time, winning the men's all-round national wushu champion title, and that was 5 times between 1974 and 1979. Well known for his action-based roles in Chinese kung fu films such as The One and Fearless, Li played General Pang in multi-award winning The Warlord, scooping Best Actor at the Hong Kong Film Awards in 2008. But it was in 1998 that Li first starred in a mainstream Hollywood movie. He joined the Lethal Weapon franchise to play a Chinese triad doing battle with police officers in the 4th action film. Well, in 2000, Li made his Hollywood leading man debut in Romeo Must Die, and this was opposite the late American singer Aaliyah. Li also starred in The Forbidden Kingdom in 2008, opposite another iconic Chinese kung fu star, Jackie Chan. It was the first collaboration between the pair. The actor also appeared on the big screen for the last time in 2020. He portrayed the Emperor in a live-action version of Mulan, opposite Yu Yifei in the title role. And he is wishing the actor a very happy 60th birthday. Thank you so much indeed for your company this hour. But stay with WION for more international headlines coming up for you shortly. Have a fantastic day.